Okay, so we're going to talk about gaits today. Fascinating topic. There's so much to talk about here. And so we tried a lot of different things. You can see some video here of Andrea and I and some of our students actually trying to demonstrate gaits. We thought this might be an interesting and entertaining way of teaching some of this.
Absolutely entertaining.
Sort of.
And there's a ton of stuff out there you guys can look at. We wanted to do something different, give you some information that you don't find out there. There are a multitude of YouTube videos online that you can look up that have different color leg wraps for the horse's legs, so you can see the walk, trot versus canter and gallop. But we wanted to do a little something unique and give you some information that we weren't sure you were going to get on the internet.
You know us by now, we like to keep things unique. So as we thought about trying to be unique and at the same time trying to have a good take-home message with all this, what Andrea and I thought about was, okay, why are gaits important?
Yeah, exactly. Why are they important? What can we pare it down to that we think are important for you to take home?
And so we basically came up with two main reasons. Now we're not saying these are the end-all be-all, but these are our two main reasons. And one is the athletic capability of the horse.
And the other is fun and recreation, what we use horses for now and how gaits correlate to that.
Which one could argue is probably the more important one. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the science and the recreation. Okay, so the science of it, the science is really, of course, I find the science fascinating. One of the sort of early papers in this area, at least for our time frame, is 1981. And so this figure that you're looking at right now actually shows oxygen consumption in 3 horses going from a walk to a trot to a gallop. And what you see, as you would expect, is that oxygen consumption increases. What's interesting is if you look at the intersection between those different gaits, what you see is that horses are able to walk as fast as they would trot, and their oxygen consumption is actually lower. And if they trot too quickly, the oxygen consumption is actually higher than it is at a walk. And so what this really highlights is that horses are very good at transitioning between the different gaits at a speed that is appropriate for the lowest energy expenditure, I would say.
Okay, so that's great, and that's a science aspect of it. So let's talk about how it applies to the fun, recreation, or even competitive component to horses and what we use them for.
Sure.
So oxygen consumption, we'll talk about endurance racing. Horses need to maintain a certain efficiency over a long period of time. They can be anywhere from 25, 50-mile rides to 100-mile rides. Mm-hmm. And horses need to be able to work efficiently over that time to maintain a pace, but also to maintain their health along those rides. And interestingly enough, from Dubai, a record, this is amazing to me, incredible 100-mile ride. The record is 5 hours, 45 minutes, 44 seconds. How incredible is that?
That's
the average speed, 17.4 miles per hour. So it comes into they have to be efficient, they have to utilize their oxygen consumption, and interestingly enough, along with this, most of the gaits they used are walk and trot along certain terrains.
Right.
So it does apply very specifically to the recreation, the use of these animals, to the scientific component of oxygen consumption with these gaits.
Interesting. All right, so if we jump back to the science for a second, okay?
We must.
We must. And we're still talking about the same paper. So we look at this Hoyt 1981 paper. Here's a second figure that's from that paper. This is sort of a step further from the last one on oxygen consumption. This looks at oxygen consumption over a certain distance. Okay. So this is called cost of transport, oftentimes abbreviated COT. So in this picture, in the upper region of this picture, what you see is that as the horse transitions from a walk to a trot to a gallop, there is a point during those where they have the lowest cost of transport. And that's sort of the bottom end of these U-curves. And what's interesting is that most horses, the bottom side of the picture shows the number of horses that choose a certain speed. Horses will typically choose a speed that is at that lowest cost of transport. So they will choose the most efficient speed. And it's really interesting to think about that. I mean, obviously the horse isn't like, oh, well, this is the best speed for this. They will choose that most efficient speed, which is really interesting.
It is. And when you talk about efficiency, use of speed, we also often talk about ambling gaits, artificial gaits.
There's not much research in that area.
And to talk about that, the fun recreational side is a huge part of that. A lot of questions come out, well, why do we have horses that artificially gait, or why are there ambling gaits? Truthfully, as somebody who's ridden them a couple times or another, they're a lot of fun. It is incredibly fun to sit up there on a Tennessee walking horse, to rack, to do the running walk, the Rocky Mountain horses, Pasafinos. It's incredibly fun and as Dr. Stanier has pointed out to me several times, fast cars. It's kind of like doing anything else recreational recreationally. There's a wonderful passion behind it, but there's also a little bit of an adrenaline rush on some of these things, as well as a comfort level. A lot of people who ride the gated horses, even the non-gated, some of the breeds have more comfort than others when they trot. And you said your horse is a little bouncy at the trot.
Yeah, I was just out on a trail ride the other day, and I was riding with some people that had gated horses, and they were just going along, comfortable as anything. And I was sitting there bouncing along, trying to post the whole time. My legs were sore by the end of the day.
If you watch a video of a gated horse, you'll watch that the rider hardly ever moves, doesn't move at all. So the utility, the comfort of that horse is incredible. The power behind riding those horses, especially in competition, is incredible, and it's a lot of fun.
All right. Back to the science. I'm going to lose my voice totally here. We talked about some of the metabolic energy requirements. We talked about oxygen consumption. But another piece of this, as much as our students here at Penn State love to do it, is the physics. Okay? We have to talk about the physics a little bit. Here's a picture out of another paper that actually looks at some of the mechanical energy that's required for this. And there's another paper here that talks about how different gaits and different ways of walking in all different mammalian species relate to physics. First, back to the picture of the horse. One of the ways we can look at this in the horse is they'll put these little reflective markers on all the body parts of the horse, and then they record that with a camera, and then they can actually import that data into a computer where they can create a computer-generated model of that horse moving.
Of course they can.
So actually, this video that you're seeing right now, I took from Michigan State University, and they have an excellent program there where they do a lot of this work. Dr. Hillary Clayton is actually the researcher that does a lot of that. So that's one way for us to think about that. But what are they actually looking at there? Okay, and what they're looking at is they think about our movement, the horse's movement, as either a set of pendulums, and oftentimes that's at the walk where we're talking about the movement walk, where so you're talking about the difference between kinetic and potential energy, or you're talking about springs or elastics. I mean, you can think about the horse's tendons or its spine, sort of building up all of that energy and storing that energy so that the horse can do amazing things like gallop, like run, to be able to move very quickly. So most of our running gaits have that elastic component to it and less of a pendulum component. But there's always probably some combination of the two of those to conserve some energy.
Absolutely. And where that correlates to fun and recreation, great highlighting example are show jumping cross country. The ability of these animals as athletes to jump the heights they do with somebody on their back.
Sure.
So you have to have that stability of the gait, and you have to have that spring and the movement in that gait to be able to get over something. So huge, great examples of the physics and the mechanics of the athleticism of the horse.
And just feeling that. I mean, again, of course, I can't talk as much for the gated horse, but I've done plenty of jumping. I've done plenty of running across the field. It's incredible to feel the power of a horse and to be able to ride that horse and experience that transfer of energy that we're talking about.
And once again, the adrenaline rush comes back in.
It does. It's like bungee jumping.
Exactly.
All right, so just to jump a little bit outside the box here, get it, jump.
Oh,
good.
That's not funny.
So anyway, for those of you that want nothing to do with the horse, and maybe you're going to go on and earn a lot more money than Andrea and I make, and get into robotic design, here's a paper that I found that actually relates to a lot of what we're talking about. So those that are in the cutting edge right now of robotic design, and you can find videos out there, we might put a couple links down below to videos of robots that are being designed like horses because of stability, energy efficiency, which is critical. I mean, when you're talking about, millions and billions of dollars being spent on a robot and you need batteries that are going to last forever, all of the things that we've talked about here become really important.
I would have never thought of basing my robotic look or design out of a horse or a quadruped.
And what they're finding is that those are some of the most successful and energy efficient robots, which is really cool, I think. How do we join the science and the fun together here? Well, we're having a little bit of fun here at the end.
Wrap it on up.
And, of course, as usual, Andrea and I have dug excessively on this topic. You come up with the question, well, who really cares about gaits? I mean, right? You just go out there and ride your horse. It's all fun. It's all wonderful. You have fun. There's a little bit of physics in there. Who cares? Surprisingly, we understand very little about gaits.
Yes, we do.
Even today. And we've been around these horses and all sorts of animals for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
I found this interesting article out of Plus close one that actually looks at how well we evaluate gaits. So here it is. This is the title of the article. Cavemen were better at depicting quadruped walking than modern artists. And it goes on and talks about more after that. How much better were cavemen? Well, they have an interesting table that's in there. So we're going to show that table here. You can look at some of those numbers. You guys can go and find this. Maybe I can put a link to this paper in the links down below. But it shows interesting statistics. Like the cavemen were wrong 46% of the time. That seems pretty bad, right?
It does.
It does seem pretty bad. But if we look at modern day cavalry sculptures, they're wrong almost a little over 65% of the time.
That's mind-blowing.
So you can go walk around. Well, you said it.
Yeah, go down to DC, walk around and see how many statues are depicting a horse walk or horse stance incorrectly.
Right. So it's pretty amazing. And some of the numbers are even higher than that. We can get up to 87% in one case where they were incorrect. And a lot of this, we talked about this early, confirmation bias. We talked about how artists used to depict horses. Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, artists are still depicting horses incorrectly.
They are. They are.
So you as animal scientists could help them out a little bit. Andrea is going to tell you how to do that.
Yes. When Dr. Stanier showed me this picture, we'll put it up in this article, I was fascinated right away because it shows the walk. And everybody says they understand gaits. When you talk to horse people, oh yeah, I understand gaits. Mm-hmm. But do we all really understand gaits? And this picture is a great depiction of how many combinations, we'll say, of forefeet versus the hind feet there are in the walk. And in the shaded area, the shaded gray area, are the correct walking patterns of the horse. But all the other white ones are incorrect. And how incorrectly they are depicted, as Dr. Stanier said, a large percentage of the time is very well depicted in this paper. Why they are, because there's so many iterations of the hind and the fore.
All looks like horses to me,
right? You look at the picture, you're like, that looks right? And then you start questioning. So think about gait a little bit more widely, broadly, about how, yes, we think a horse is walking, but when it's depicted in books, museums, statues, or when somebody actually asks you to tell them about gaits, walk, trot, canter, gallop, can you do that? And how well can you do that?
I suggest everybody carry this picture around in their pocket with them and check every time they see a picture of a horse or a statue of a horse.
That would be fun.
So that's all we have for today, guys. I hope that you've learned a little bit more about gaits.
I know I have.
Appreciate them a bit more. We'll see you the next time.
Until next time.